download files. Let me send those over in a link. Welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a good day here and hope it gets a little better still with some Office Scripts knowledge. I'm going to put this in the chat. Here are the resources. And again, just like normal, if you've attended one of these before, chances are somebody will come in late asking for that download link. You're welcome to share that. It'll stay up later on too, and the recording will go out later today. So I'm going to go ahead and just click that link. You will get that folder to download. And then you should just be able to extract that folder and get the files right there. Perfect. Okay, so let's dive in here. There's some slides. We'll start with the slides. We'll go into Excel. And here we go. Okay, so let me share my slides here. Okay. No, yes. Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, although I think a lot of you, at least here, do, a lot of you have been to these events before. My name is George Mount. I'm a Microsoft MVP, mostly using Excel. I'm the author of a couple books with O'Reilly Media. Modern Data Analytics in Excel is the last one. Advancing into Analytics is the one that came before that. I do a lot of data analytics training and consulting, mainly through Excel, just helping teams get the most value out of Excel, help them function as data analysts, data scientists, and data engineers in Excel. And you'll see that Office Scripts offers some really exciting new avenues for automation and workbook scalability and production and things like that. So, you're welcome to get in touch. I think a lot of you are connected on LinkedIn. I'll send an email out later. You're welcome to email me back if I can help you get the most out of Excel for your team. With that being said, what are our objectives today? I like to think of these as almost like free sample sessions, okay? So I'm going to hand you out some free stuff. I don't expect anything in return. You can take a look at it and play with it. If you want more, you can get in touch. If that's, if you just wanted to try it out, that's fine too. I'll help you as much as I can with questions in terms of specific use cases and can, Office Scripts do this and can Office Scripts do that? If you're looking to be sold on using Office Scripts, again, this is just a free sample. So, I don't think you would go up to Costco and take a free sample from someone and convince them that, hey, is this the best thing that I can make for dinner tonight? No, you're just trying something out, right? So just think of it like that. If you're not totally convinced on Office Scripts, that's fine. It's a new product. If I can help you out, that's great too. But, don't think that this is the be all end all and don't think that, I'm here to necessarily like sell you on Office Scripts as like the best tool ever for Excel. It's just one of many other tools. I'm saying these things specifically because people get pretty irritated and aggravated when it comes to VBA and how Office Scripts relates to VBA and how it relates to Power Query. I think there are like so many tools in the Excel ecosystem that people just get a little overwhelmed and they want quick answers on what tool is best when. And unfortunately, the reason there are so many tools is because there are so many scenarios, there are so many possibilities. So, I'll do my best for specific use cases, but, I'm just saying this is kind of a free sample. Just try it out, see if it fits, and, go from there. So we're going to look at how does Office Scripts help you with automation, how to use the Office Script Recorder. If you've ever used VBA and the macro recorder, you're going to see some similarities there. We're going to look at understanding the core structure of Office Scripts. This is a new programming language. Specifically, it's a programming language based on JavaScript. Okay, so this is a new world, brave new world in Excel where you're using JavaScript, but we're going to look at the basics of how to use that, how to organize, how to share, how to execute your scripts. So again, free sample, beginner, 101. We're not going to be building, the great wall of automation or anything like that. This is just very simple little scripts that we're going to do today. Okay. And the first thing is to make sure, and I'll put this link in the chat, that you even have access to Office Scripts, because that is one of the things that is holding this back from wider adoption. So let me put this in the chat, that link. Okay, welcome everybody who's just tuned in. Okay, so if you click over to this link on Office Scripts, I'll do that myself. Okay, you'll learn a little bit more about what you need to even get access to this tool. So primarily, this is a business product right now for Excel. If you're on an enterprise level version of Excel, it's more likely you're going to have access. Even so, based on the amount of pushes that your IT department sends out for Excel updates and different restrictions that they have, you might not still have it. Okay, if you want it on a personal version, you can do that, but you need to go into the insider program. So there is a lot. This is not just something that you open up and it's there in Excel right now. It is a newer feature. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to go ahead and head back to the slides, and I put that link in the chat. Take a look at it. We'll get started in a second and make sure you even have it. And if you don't, you can go back to those resources. But this is like the elephant in the room, I would say, about Office Scripts. How does it compare and contrast to VBA? Okay, so I have a few resources in here. I don't necessarily want to go through each of these one step at a time. Okay, I think if you don't see a link in the chat, it's because you came in late. So again, any links in the chat that I mentioned, people, you're welcome to share again. All right, let me open this up. There's a PDF in here. I don't want to go through this step by step because there are a lot of pros and cons here. But the way you want to think about this is that, okay, VBA has been around for a long time. VBA is a desktop first kind of tool. So here's this table down here. Okay, if you are looking to interface with tools on the web, if you want to run automations from the web, from OneDrive, you want things to run so that they don't need to be done on a local computer. You want things to be interfacing with Power Automate, which is another tool that I'm going to do some training on. It's really a web first program. Okay, that makes it in some ways more secure. I know a lot of us know, right, from experience that macros, it's been harder and harder to use them, to share them, and there's a reason, one of which is the security issues that macros offer. Okay, so just think of this as a web first, cloud first experience. Okay, there are some other benefits. Okay, there are still reasons to use VBA, and there always will be reasons to use VBA. But the way I think about this, right, there are always reasons to use Fortran and COBOL and languages like that. Yes, there are reasons for those. But for most people, for the average citizen developer, there aren't as many reasons to use those as there have been in the past. So that's how I think about it. Okay. And you can go through these pros and cons if you want. I don't even know if they're really pros and cons. It's just compare and contrast, really, is a better way to say it. So it's kind of a dance here. I don't want to say I don't want to say Office Scripts is replacing VBA because it's not. But I would say for most people, has Fortran been replaced? No. But for most people, do they use Fortran on a daily basis? No. So that's the, politician's answer right there. All right. So you have that resource, you have the slides. If there are any questions about that, please, don't hesitate to ask. But let's keep going here. And then you have that resource, you have the PDF, you have all that stuff. So that's just the, overview, elephant in the room, get that question answered. Okay. And if there are any more questions, feel free to let me know. All right. What might be better is to actually dive in here and see this thing in action. Talking about these tools is one thing, using them is another. So similar to VBA, there is a macro recorder feature. Okay, there are pros and cons to using that, just like there is in VBA. It's easy, it's quick, but it's not the smartest tool, and it's not the most scalable tool. So let's see what that means here. All right, so we're going to create a script with record actions. We're going to look at the advantages and disadvantages of record actions. If you want to head to the website and follow along, I'll put this link in the chat. And again, if anybody's looking for that later, you're welcome to do so, to share it, but let's go ahead and dive into this record actions file right here. Okay, so there's that. All right, so I'm going to open this up. All right, we have a small data set here. Now I'm going to use this as a report automation tool. Okay, that that's pretty similar to Office to VBA, right? Let's say I do this every week and I want to like add formatting, I want to add conditional formatting, maybe I want to add a table. There are things that you might want to do or a chart. Power Query doesn't do those things, right? It's really more of a data cleaning and prep tool. If you're looking on the front end and you want to be able to automate what the users see, right, in terms of, again, formatting charts, maybe data validation, stuff like that, pivot tables, adding those or setting those up. Those are the kinds of things that you're going to need another front end scripting tool for. VBA is one of them. Office Scripts is another. Again, think of Office Scripts as a cloud-friendly version. So if you want to connect this with Power Automate, maybe you're getting data from an RSS feed, or you're getting data from a form that people are filling out, or you're getting project updates from Microsoft Project Planner, things like that. You can build workflows that go up on the cloud, get scheduled. You want it to be run every Monday at 10 a.m. Or maybe you have things in Excel that you want to go out, send out a Teams notification at a certain time when a value changes, stuff like that. That's more so, linking Office Scripts with Power Automate. They do work hand in hand. We're going to focus more on building the actual scripts in here, which really are, helping us set up our formatting, do all that automation, so we're not spending all of our time just making our data look good and putting our reports together. So the first thing we're going to do is how to automate. Now, again, if you do not see this, then you don't have Office Scripts. I don't think there are any other courses of action if you don't see this. I don't think you need to like enable it or anything like that. One thing you might try is if you go over to File, and I think it's Options, and you go to, customize ribbon, okay? Just make sure that you have automate turned on. I know with VBA, that's one of those things where you do need to have the developer button turned on to see it. So again, that may be one last course of action: File, Options, and then go to Customize Ribbon. Now, if you don't see this, then, unfortunately, you just don't have it. That means that you do want to, see where you can get it. And I just shared that link again in that chat. All right. So we are going to set up a script for this. And you know what? I'm going to make this even a little messier. Let's just make these columns a little smaller. So you'll see a couple things here. These dates aren't formatted right. They're serial numbers. Maybe I want to conditionally format all the hours spent that are above, 3 or something like that. And do those basic kinds of tasks, because I want to auto fit the width. Okay, so actually let's even put that in the, let's put this over here. All right, those are kind of hard to see. I'll put this in the chat too. Oops, okay. So let's see how we do this. This is going to work very, very similarly to the macro recorder. I'm going to go to automate. I'm going to go to record actions. Okay. Everything we're doing here, right? This is very similar to VBA. Everything we're doing is going to be recorded here. So this is like a low code way to do this. So the first thing I'm going to do, let's select column A. I'm going to do my control 1. I'm going to make this a date format. Okay, get rid of the serial numbers. And you'll see right there instantly that the numbers are, I'm sorry, your steps are being recorded. Okay, things are still recording. We can go ahead and continue on. Let's auto fit everything. I'll just select the entire worksheet, double click one of these, right? Auto fit columns is there. Okay, and then last but not least, let's conditionally format this. I'm just going to conditionally format those cells, those numbers. Let's say everything that is greater than, let's say 3, which looks, okay, let's set that to 3. We'll format this. Again, not the most, sophisticated report here, and we will look at the limitations in a minute. You will see that additional steps get set up for conditional formatting, because basically, if you think about it, we are both formatting the cell shade, right, and the font. So that's why there are some extra steps here. Okay, so that is all done. And again, this is the same thing where, if for whatever reason I accidentally, deleted this column or something like that, that is going to be recorded, right? Everything you do, by and large, is going to be recorded to your Office script record actions here. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that. Okay. Actually, I think I should have undo that. Make sure you undo that too, and then delete that step. And now we have this script recorded. So let's go ahead and just click stop. Okay. And we will see a script here. Now, I don't know why I don't actually see it. Let me go in here and maybe, yeah, let's go to advanced edit. This even looks like a newer thing in Office scripts. It's changing all the time. Let me save this first. Let's just call this like my first script. Okay. You will see that this gets saved as a custom file extension, OSTS. There is a default place where your Office scripts are going to be saved, and it is on your OneDrive. There's going to be a folder, I believe it's in your documents folder, right? So there it is under documents. This gets created by default. And I believe that if I go up here too, you'll see that there are some, and I have a bunch of stuff in here, but there are some samples that come by default as well. So you should have access to those too. So this is where they'll go. You can access them if you go on OneDrive. You can see all of them. There are some ways to share them. If we have time, we'll talk about doing that. But this is just the default behavior. Okay. And the other thing I want to see here, this is really interesting, is that I've never seen just the steps listed here. Usually I'm used to actually seeing the code. So if I click advanced edit, okay, so this is what I'm used to seeing, okay? And it looks like they're trying to push you further and further away from needing to use and access this code. Unfortunately, as you're quickly going to see, we're far away from that. But this is the code that gets generated by Office scripts. Now, it looks a little different than anything else you've seen before because this is a different programming language. Specifically, this is TypeScript, okay? So TypeScript is like, I forget what they call it, a superset of JavaScript. There's a name for it, but it's kind of like a grandchild of JavaScript. You never used JavaScript before, that's okay. I would say that JavaScript is a good thing to learn, just like 2 or 3 years ago, it seemed like a wild idea that that an Excel user would learn Python. People were really hesitant, resistant, didn't understand why. And now, hey, look, Python's in Excel, and I haven't heard anybody really complain about it lately. So I think JavaScript's going to be like that in the next 2, 3 years. Right now, we're at the point where suggesting, hey, it's good to know a little JavaScript. People are like, what are you talking about? Why would you do that? I don't know, that doesn't make sense. In a couple 3 years, people, okay, yeah, JavaScript, that's a good thing to know for Excel. So that's just my prediction. All right. And this is the code that gets generated. So, we're not going to do a lot to actually edit this. We might in a little bit, but you'll see that all of our scripts are going to start with this function main. Okay. We're going to set up all these different steps. And this does set up some comments for us. So we can kind of understand what we're doing here. I might, if we did, for example, if we wanted to change this hex code, we could certainly do that, right? If you knew what hex code you wanted to do. So there are ways to take this script, right? Set it up with record actions and then make some edits. Pretty limited though. Let's go ahead and actually try that out. I'm going to go ahead and save this and let's go to report 2. So this is kind of like the same data. It's just set up a little different. So I do have my first script set up here. I'm going to go ahead and run this. The script is running. It worked. The issue though is, right, like column A, D2 through D7, there's a lot of like hard-coded ranges in here. What happens if this data set, it started in this cell, or if this column is actually in column B, or if there are a different number of rows, or what if I wanted to just loop through all the worksheets, right? We can't do a lot of those things. So it's pretty limited in terms of really building scripts that last and that are extensible and that are scalable. But at least it's a start and you can kind of, get your feet wet with this. Okay. So if you weren't able to follow this script and do it with record actions, this full script is on my website. So you're welcome to head over there. And I put that link in the chat here. So that's record actions in a nutshell. You will see another thing if I go back here and let's actually record another action here. There is a relative mode here. So if you're familiar with that in VBA, it's a similar idea where, if I were to start my script off with cell B9, everything that I record is going to be relative to where I start out at, right? So it'll say, go down one row and one column, and it'll be not necessarily C10, but it'll just be one row and one column down from where I start off at. So if there are pros and cons of doing relative versus absolute referencing. By default, absolute is going to be the default. You can play around with those and see which one works the best for you. But I think absolute is probably what most people are going to use there. Okay, so that's setting up the recorder. All right, let's actually look a little bit further at customizing this code ourselves and really understanding the basics of how this language works. Obviously, I can't teach you JavaScript in an hour. I'm still learning it myself. There really aren't that many resources on Office scripts specifically. So it really is a wide frontier right now, which means that there is some good opportunity, if you want to take the lead and share your own resources, right? This would be a good one to really take a stab at, carving your own corner of this universe, right? So let's take a look at function main. Okay, this, like I said, is really the heart of Office scripts. Okay, this is really all of our code is going to be placed inside a function main. There are ways to customize that and try out different parameters and things like that. And that's what we're going to do right now. So go ahead if you want to follow along, just open up a blank worksheet. I'm going to go ahead and use this resource here to guide this for us. And I did put that link in the chat. So for those of you who just tuned in, we are working through these resources here that I put in that GitHub link. You can download that. You'll see all this stuff. You'll see the deck. You'll see the workbooks, except in this case, I'm just going to have us open up a blank workbook. Okay, so if I go over to Office scripts, and this is nice too, you don't really need like a personal macro workbook. You don't have to worry about saving your macro in the file or in the workbook or anything like that. It's always just going to save in your Office scripts here. Okay. And there are, again, ways to share it and move these and stuff like that. But by default, these are just going to be on your OneDrive on Office scripts. Okay. And you'll see, for example, my first script is right here. So I could take that script here. I could run it. Of course, it's not going to really do very much because we don't have any data in here, but I did just run that script. Okay. So let's actually start from scratch by writing our own here. The main function is really the heart, like I said, of Office scripts. This comes from JavaScript and specifically TypeScript, and it will let us really organize our code into specific functions. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new script this time under developer. I'm sorry, under automate developers for VBA. You'll see we get this kind of like hello world looking script here. So it'll say, here's my function. Okay, the way to interpret this is we are using functions. So you use functions in Excel all the time, right? Use VLOOKUP, use XLOOKUP, use all sorts of functions. We're going to apply this function to this specific workbook. Okay, we are going to get the active cell. We are going to get the active worksheet, right? And we're going to fill out whatever that active cell in the worksheet as yellow. All right, so that's the basic way to interpret this. This is a good place to, get familiar with Copilot or generative AI or something like that. In fact, what you could probably even do is come over here to home. Let's go to Copilot. And you don't even necessarily you do need to have your file saved in your OneDrive, but you don't necessarily need to be working with Excel data to use this thing. I could ask any kind of questions. So let's say, explain this code to me, right? So let's paste that in there and we're going to get some help understanding this. Unfortunately, Excel isn't that integrated yet where you can't just go in anywhere into Power Query or Office Scripts or Power Pivot and get an answer quickly. But, I was able to go into this main Copilot, paste in my code, get an explanation of what this code does. Okay, so don't be afraid to use AI a lot for Office Scripts. I don't think it's really worth trying to learn this from the ground up. It's good over time, but if you just want to get started, don't be afraid to just iterate with AI and see what it gives you, because that's what I'm doing myself. Like I said, I didn't know JavaScript before I started learning this a few months ago, and I'm still really kind of getting my feet wet. So just a caveat there. All right, so there are different ways to set up our Office scripts here. I'm going to go ahead and let's create our own hello world function. I'm going to put this in the chat as well. So just go ahead and get rid of all this stuff. So actually, we could just run it anyway. Let's run this. Okay. And you'll see that the current cell gets shaded yellow. Okay. Fair enough. Right. Okay. Fine. Let's call this something like hello world. Okay. Make sure it gets saved. Okay. And I'm just gonna go ahead and write my own function here. So you'll see it still starts with function main. Okay. But I'm doing something similar, right? I am still using the current workbook as my parameter. I'm going to find the active worksheet. Okay. And then I'm going to find specifically cell A1. I'm not looking at the active cell anymore. I'm looking at a specific cell, and I'm going to set the value of hello world in there. So go ahead and do that. I'm going to put this in the chat. I believe if I use this code font, it should be pretty easy to copy and paste that into your Office scripts. Okay, it looks like it didn't quite format well. So what you might need to do, because what I'm seeing is don't use the paste, the copy button. If you actually go into the worksheet, like, I'm sorry, go into the data, copy and paste it from there, it looks like it renders better inside of Office scripts. So go ahead and do that. And you'll see as we run this, right, we see hello world is added to that cell. And it's always going to be, right, A1. If I wanted to make this something like D4, I could certainly go ahead and do that. Okay. Now it looks like if you remember, we added conditional formatting earlier on, right, with that other script, and it looks like that conditional formatting is still there. So that's why we have a value conditionally formatted there. So I was not expecting that, but there are always downstream implications of earlier steps you do in Excel. So you'll see that this is our hello world Office script. And if we wanted to, make this maybe an entire range, that's fine. Now, if we wanted to make this more dynamic and, say, well, make it for all of the active, rows in my table or something like that, or a specific, make it always the third column in this table, or whatever. There are ways to do that. Obviously, that's going to take more finesse, more scaffolding, and things like that. So we're just keeping it pretty naive for right now, but you can always go ahead and, add this yourself. Okay, so now let's get a little more sophisticated here. So what I'm going to do is let's select a cell, and we are going to, and I'm actually going to just clear this whole thing out. Let's wipe out this formatting, clear all. Okay, there we go. And again, we can always run the script again. I'm going to create a little bit more of a sophisticated script here. Okay, I'm going to put this in the chat again. Again, it works a little better if you actually go in, highlight the entire script, and then paste it into Office scripts rather than hitting the copy button to clipboard. That doesn't seem to work very well. So here's my new script. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my data. Let's say I had some other stuff in here, right? Like let's just put placeholder here, because this is a common thing, right? When you're usually automating things, you need to write over things, you need to update things. You're not going to just do something once. So you want some safeguards in place to be able to write over and redo your work. So that's what we're doing right now. So we're going to apply this to cell A1 through A5. Okay. We're going to find cell A1. We're going to name it hello world. Okay. We are going to set the color to the specific hex code. Okay. And then we're going to also auto fit the width. So we're just getting a little more sophisticated. So this kind of reminds me of like Power Query or M code, right? Where we've got like a lot of steps, one by one, and we're chaining a lot of methods together and stuff like that. If you've used Python before, this is a pretty similar technique as well, where we do one thing, we do a dot, and then we add another step, and we chain them together. So there are elements of like programming languages that you might be familiar with, but this is really its own thing. So let's go ahead and run that, and you'll see that does exactly what we thought it would, right? It cleared out all this data. It added A1, hello world. It shaded that yellow. We still only have the one parameter in here. So how could we get this a little more interactive? Maybe one of the things we might want to do is color this with a different shade of yellow, or let the user decide what shade to color it with, or things like that. So there's some different ways that we can do this. Let me put this one in the chat here. Okay. This is also all on my website. You can follow along with that later on if you want. Let's paste this in to our script here. Okay, so this one is a little bit more streamlined, so I'm not worried about clearing out cell A1 through A5 anymore. But what I am doing up here is, rather than having just the one parameter, this time I'm actually defining a color, right? So you're seeing we have two parameters here. We're applying everything to this workbook, but I'm also setting up a color that I can use later. Specifically, that color is going to be green. And one of the things we're going to call out is the type of that data. That's one of the reasons this is called TypeScript, right? So we are going to be calling out, explicitly defining those variable types up here in the parameters. So we're setting up a color. It's a string. It's going to be green. And the way you want to think about this is that, right, we are using this variable and we're going to pass it down here. So we've defined color as a string being green. We're going to set that color down there. Let's go ahead and run that. And you'll actually see that when we do this, we're adding a little bit of interactivity to the workbook. So we just set up a default color here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and run that, and we can try that out again. But this is a way to build just a really quick, easy user form, right? You don't have to set up your own user form. It'll just set this up automatically. Okay, hello world, there's the script, enter my parameter. If I wanted to change this to, something like blue, I think I could do it here. I'll show you a way so that the user, exactly. So we can go ahead and run this. The default is green. If I wanted to set this to red or something like that, I could do that. Now, if I didn't want the user to have a, assumed value like that, let's see how that would play out. I'm going to put another link in the chat there. Let's go ahead and just copy and paste this. Oops, that one I copy and pasted from the clipboard. Don't do that. Copy and paste the whole thing, select it, and then run it. So what we're doing here is that we have a couple of options. Let's run. Okay, so there's a message here, okay, which means we can specify what we want this to say, right? What should this say? Should it say hello world, or should it say, hello office scripts or something like that? Okay, and we can also say, what color should this be? I'll make it yellow. All right, so we're giving our user some interactivity here. We could have easily, set another variable here for the cell location, right? We could even, I don't know, set up a different worksheet, all sorts of different inputs that we are setting up this user form to let our user, office scripts rules, right? And let's make this red, our color of love there. Okay, there we go. So, we can use and reuse this. And that's how function main works. So you'll see that everything we do is going to be enclosed in one of these function mains. Basically, everything you're going to do is going to apply to your current workbook. Okay, and then from there, if there are other parameters that you want the user to maybe interact with, you want to set. There's some other things that can get a little more sophisticated than this, but again, this is just a sample session. Understand what this tool is all about, and maybe you'll have some specific use cases that you want to explore later. Okay. So I don't see a lot of questions in the chat. Hopefully you all are just having fun, trying this out for yourself, which is great. We still have some time, so I'll just keep going here. And let's look at how to share our office scripts. I think we might actually have time to do another demo, but let me go through what I was planning to get through today first. Okay, where'd my slides go? There they went. Okay. Okay. Okay, record actions. We did that. Okay, we looked at function main. Let's look at sharing our office scripts. So this is going to be important, right? You're probably not the only person who's going to use these scripts. So what can you do so that people can use them, reuse them, share them, and so forth? So similar idea here. Let me copy this thing and put it into the chat. You have all these slides though. I mean, you've got all this stuff, so you can find it, but it's right there. And if you want it. Okay, so there is an exercise file we're going to use for this one, sharing office scripts. Okay, let's head over there and let's open this. Okay, so here we're going to get a little more sophisticated with the kinds of scripts that we're using. What I want to do in this one is we're going to create a table of contents worksheet, right? So we've got all of these. It looks like we could format that column, that date column, but that's fine. We've got multiple worksheets, okay? We want to be able to go through, understand how many worksheets do we have, what are they named, and then add an interactive table of contents worksheet. So this is just, a little bit easier for the sake of navigation. Okay, now I'm not going to go through how to set this all up in Office Scripts because you are going to see it's a somewhat more sophisticated kind of a script here, but it is in the blog post, and I'll also just put this in the chat. So if you want to try this out yourself, go ahead and grab that from the chat. Again, make sure you're copying and pasting, not from the clipboard, but highlight, select the entire thing. And you know what to do. Let's go to automate. Let's go to new script. And let's call this something like, let's go back here, new script. Okay, I don't know why I did that. Let's call it something like add TOC. It looks like I probably already have a script called that. But let's see if it lets us. Yeah, the script has already been named. Okay, so that's fine. 2. That's fine. You name it whatever you want. Okay. And let's give this a run. Okay. So we'll run it. We'll see it runs, and we will see we have a table of contents worksheet, right? So that every worksheet, we have a nice hyperlink. We're able to, and if, for whatever reason, let's say I delete a worksheet or renamed it, let's delete this one. You can try this on your end too, right? If I wanted to just call this feedback or something like that. Let's go back here and we'll run, and you'll see that a couple of things happen. This updates, right? So everything here is going to update, but we're also going to see a button here, and you may have seen it already. I kind of skipped over it, but there's this option that says this script ran multiple times. If you'd like to add it to your workbook. Now, when it says add it to your workbook, these files, your Office script is still going to be located in your Office scripts folder. What it really means is add in workbook. Okay, there it is. Okay, so what this really means is it's going to add this little button. Okay, so this is just a little easier. And okay, let me try to resize this. Okay, you have to like right click it, I think, and then hover it. It's not the easiest thing to move around. But now we have this little button that people can use. So if you want to, name this something like, update TOC or something like that, right? You could do that. So this is very VBA-esque, right? Except the nice thing, again, is this is on the cloud, so you can easily reuse this macro. It's not really macro anymore. Reuse this Office script in other sources. You just have this little button here. Okay, so if I go down here to the bottom, actually, let's click under here, where it says, okay, let's go back to all scripts. Let's go here. Let's go to details, I think it is. Here it is. Okay. So here are some things to be aware of with putting up this script so that other people can use it, right? Because that's the goal here. So we have this button. It makes it easier to locate. And again, this is under details. So script access, everybody with access to this workbook can run this script here, okay? So your script is still, the source is still in your OneDrive, but anybody has access to running it, okay? Who can edit this script? So if you wanted to change that access, you could do that too. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to share your scripts with other people, because again, this doesn't really live in the workbook, right? It lives in Office on your OneDrive. Okay, but this is one way to do it. And again, anybody here, so you can, add the button. You can add it without a button so that people can still run it. They'll still have to go up to automate and find it, I believe is how that works. But I think just adding the button is the best way to do that. Okay, so that's one way to do it. The other way to do this is, and I'm just going to head into my blog post and share this so we don't have to log into OneDrive and all that. So if you actually want to share the script, okay, rather than just letting people use it in a specific workbook, okay, there are a couple ways to do that. This will work pretty similarly to sharing any kind of file, right, on OneDrive. You can share a copy, right? You can edit it. One of the nice ways to do this is to actually move it into a shared location. So you can use SharePoint to access these files, okay? So that'll make it easier to move and reuse this file there, okay? Outside of your organization, these are hard to share. For whatever reason, this OSTS file, when you try to open it in OneDrive, it's gonna end up this weird like JSON half rendered formatting. So they're very hard to share outside of the organization. So I would encourage you to just use something like a GitHub gist or some other kind of a thing. If you're not familiar with GitHub gist, they just let you do, quick code snippets here for different things. So I have a bunch that I share, with clients or on my blog or whatever. Just quick little bits of code that you might want to share. I would suggest using that because these are really meant to be like inter-office kind of or intra-office applications. Okay, so those are the basics on sharing. All right. One thing that we haven't gotten to today, and that I know I have a session coming up on Power Automate, is how to schedule and scale this stuff. So, if you wanted to do things like, how do I run this script on multiple files at once, right? Because right now we're just working on one file at a time. How would I run this on a schedule, right? So sharing it so that people can click the button is one thing, but maybe, you want this to just kick off, every first of the week, first of the month, whatever. You could certainly do those things. And again, that would be more of an Office Scripts and Power Automate combo. So it's a good idea, I would say, to learn a little bit of Office Scripts, learn a bit of Power Automate, which we'll do in a few weeks, and then combine them, and you'll see that there's a lot of cool applications. You could even use these two too if you have like queries that you want to refresh on a schedule. You could write an Office script to refresh those queries and then schedule that on Power Automate, and that's going to run just on the cloud around the clock. So you don't need to have files open. Everything just goes on its own, no desktop on premises computers being on required or anything like that. Okay, so those are the basics on sharing. All right. We still have a few minutes, so there was a little demo that I was planning to do, but I wasn't sure if we'd have time. Again, I haven't seen like too many questions, so hopefully you're all just kind of basking in the glory of Power Automate here, which is fine. Let me unhide this slide. Okay, so let's work on this one, I guess, with the amount of time, and then we can close. If you're feeling good with everything, you're welcome to hang out or not. As usual, let me do a couple of disclaimers here. Okay. So the first thing is, I do have a lot of these webinars coming up. You're welcome to attend as many as you'd like. They are all free, and I'm going to talk about what that means in a second. So let me share my screen. Okay, so these are all the sessions that are coming up. Okay, some of these are not for a while. I have like a lot of travel coming up soon, so I'm not going to be as around for some of these. But we're going to talk about Power Automate. We're going to talk about Power Query. I did have to reschedule last week's on Power Query, so I apologize with that. But I'm going to try to do it again. It's not until January. I'm just on the road a lot from now until like January, February. But you're welcome to attend any of these. And again, I don't charge for these. I've tried in the past different ways to charge for this stuff. I found that it's not really worth it. Really, the best thing that I can get from these is your feedback. Okay, so let me put this link up in the chat, and I'll send this stuff all out to you. So don't worry about writing this stuff all down. But all I really ask for is just some feedback. Just a testimonial would be great. Let me know your honest feedback. Was this helpful? What else would you like to see? I don't ask for donations. This is not like, really, this is just to get feedback is why I do these. So if you could offer that to me, that would be super, super helpful so that these, help me in my business and I can keep doing them. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go ahead and dive into console log quickly here, and then we'll close the session. So console log is something we haven't really looked at yet, and this is another element of the Office Scripts environment. And what this is going to do is print output out to our console. That might be familiar if you've used a programming language before. So it's not going to actually display in your workbook. You're just going to see it printed out in your console environment. So this is really useful, particularly with debugging, particularly if you're using loops in Office Scripts, which is, again, not really something that the script recorder will help you out with. But as you're starting to scale up and trying to get more dynamic and stuff like that, you're probably going to be using loops to a great extent. Console log is going to help you actually walk through that script and debug it and understand how it works. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this link in the chat. Okay, we'll walk through this one and then we'll be done for the day. Okay, and let me put that in the chat. All right, so there is a file to, I thought there was a file I would have had you open. Okay, you can just open a blank workbook for this one, actually. All right, so let's go ahead and dive back in here. Okay, and I'm just going to make a new workbook. I don't think it matters, but just to keep things clean here. Let's go back to automate. Okay, we are going to make a new script. We're going to wipe this thing out, the hello world. We don't need that. And we are going to write our own little hello world here. As usual, I'm going to put this in the chat. Go ahead and paste that in if you would like. Okay, so let's see what this does for us. Now, this one is a little different because we're not really going to be doing anything to the workbook, okay? What we're doing here is, this is still function main. Everything we're doing is function main. We're going to use this console log here, okay? We're going to say script execution started. It's going to find the name of that worksheet, and it's going to print the name of that worksheet down here at the bottom. So if I run this, you'll see our script is running, and now we have a new little like task pane below, right? So it says, here's our output, right? Script execution started, currently active sheet 1. So this is a way to, print values and properties and things like that without necessarily showing anything in the workbook. This is more internally for us as the developer to really understand how the script is working. Okay. So what we could use this for is a lot of different things, primarily working with loops. Let me put this next one in the chat as well. Again, this is a pretty contrived example, but you got to start somewhere. So what we're going to do right here is, again, function main. Wish I could make this a little bigger. Okay, it looks like I can't control plus. Okay, so let's make that a little bigger. So this is a for loop. If you've programmed before, you're probably familiar with the idea, right? So from 1 to 5, we're going to keep incrementing up to 5, and we're going to print the current number each time, okay? So what this console log is going to do is just let us open up that hood and really understand what's happening here, right? So we have current number 1, and again, Office scripts, hey, can we share this as a button? Nah, that's okay right now. So you'll see our current number, okay? Problems over here, this is something that you'll see often, and it's a good reminder that if you're adding console log, it could make your script go a little more sluggish. Okay, so if you don't need it, it's a good idea to wipe it out when you're done. But for right now, for debugging, it's fine. So that's the problem that we get here. Help, I'm not really sure. Okay, help just gives us some links. So output is really what we're specifically focused on right now. Okay, so again, we're looping from 1 to 5, and we're seeing each time getting printed a console is that current number. Okay, fair enough. Let's actually try something, a little more realistic, although we're still in kind of playground mode right now. So I'm adding some numbers to the worksheet rather than just sticking them inside of the script here. So let's pull these numbers from A1 to A5, okay? And then try to loop through. This is a very inefficient way of doing things. There's really no reason to use a loop to sum up these numbers, but just for the sake of, practice, we'll try this out. Okay, so we're going to take our workbook. We're going to take A1 through A5. We're going to start at 0. We're going to take these values. We're going to loop through each one, and we're going to keep incrementing. So what this plus and the equal sign means is, we'll take our current value, and then we'll keep appending to that value. So we're basically trying to add up the numbers in this range in a very inelegant way. But again, got to start somewhere. Let's go ahead and run that. And you'll see that, we do get a final sum here. Okay. But a couple things we're having a problem with. I don't know how on earth I got to 043421. It looks like somehow it's appending these numbers. It's not clear, right? So this is a really good example of where adding console log in strategic places in this script can be really useful. Let me put this in the chat as well. Okay, let's run that. I think this is like our last script here. All right, so we have our cells here. We're going to do the same thing. I'm not going to go through exactly what I just did here, but you are going to see this is where I am adding the value, right? So this is going to show us, okay, how do I get from point A to point B to point C and so forth? And what is the current value? and then what is the final value? So let's run this and we'll see exactly. Okay, so it looks like we're starting here and then we go to 043 and then we go to 0434 and now it's becoming pretty clear that for some reason it's like appending these files rather than actually appending these values rather than actually summing them. Okay, so that was, kind of, we could have seen that without going through console log, but now it's really, really clear exactly what's happening each step of the way. So let's do one more to fix that. Again, this is one of those cases where just, tweaking one little bit of code is going to get you to exactly what you want. Let's run this, and now we'll see, okay, yes, we're getting from 4 to 11, etc. Final sum is 14. That's what we wanted. Terribly inelegant way to sum, but again, just for the sake of an easy, accessible example, that's what we're going with right now. All right, so that's what I've got for Office scripts. Again, I shared the resources, the link, the downloads, all that stuff will come out. The event feedback form is really, really useful for me, just so I get that data and feedback to share. And I think that's everything. Yeah, visit my website. I've got lots of posts up there. Connect on LinkedIn if you haven't already. Hope you found this useful. There aren't a lot of resources out there yet for Office scripts, so I'm hoping that this was a good addition there. And I think that's it for right now. So hope to see y'all next time. Have a great rest of your day. And, you can tune into another one. Let me know what I can do for you in the meantime as well. And thank you, Houston. Thank you, Nico. Thanks everybody else. Peter, Mark, Trevor, a lot of familiar names here. Avi. Yep. All right, I'm gonna stop recording and I'll get all this stuff out in an email shortly. Okay. Thanks everybody.